Welcome back to Fast Market on the TD Ameritrade Network. I'm Tom White, joined by my co-host Kevin Hinks. But let's bring in our next guest for our cash tag segment. That's going to be Megan Brantley, the Vice President of Research at LikeFolio. Welcome back to the show, Megan.
Thanks for having me, guys.
All right, so we're talking meta platforms. You know, everybody talks about, their investment in the metaverse and the big chunk of change that they're laying out with the I don't know. There's probably potential for the metaverse somewhere. I don't know how they monetize it moving forward. But you've got to remember, they've got all these social media apps, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp. I mean, they still have billions of users on a daily basis across their platforms. What kind of data are you guys seeing at a LikeFolio? I mean, are people still engaging or are they pulling back?
Yeah, so whenever we think of Meta, it's important to remember, I think they have 3.6 billion monthly active users across their entire suite of apps. That is an enormous audience that is captive that, in theory, they should be able to monetize. And so whenever we look at Meta, we're looking at all of the different brands underneath their umbrella to understand, what are they doing well and where could they improve? And so whenever we look at this brand breakdown, we can see some divergence here. And so the things that are doing well, for example, it's WhatsApp, which you have to think a lot of international usage here. It's a messaging app that's doing well, but I think that's a little bit tougher to monetize. The key here are its Reels and its Instagram application. And so Reels is kind of, Meta's TikTok clone, if you will. And then Instagram is, really image content based and also now increasingly video based social platform. And we see Reels and Instagram doing well. And you can kind of see a natural incorporation of its ad model in these platforms. But then on the flip side, you see this Oculus, which is, think of this virtual reality headset. So this first step extension into the metaverse. We see demand for that device actually waning a bit year over year, which will be something that we'll need to watch into this holiday season. And then its namesake Facebook app, we continue to see that lose steam. The mentions on our end, and you got to think of these mentions like people downloading, we see that continuing to drop off about 26% lower year over year. And then also when we look at just regular usage for Facebook, we see that down about 6% year over year. So I think that, if you're looking at Meta as a whole, you've got to look at, okay, it's really weighing and it's really counting on Instagram and this Reels concept right now to offset this weakness in Facebook and even its VR Oculus brand.
Megan, does this company need a PR help? I mean, they changed the name from Facebook to Meta. They should have changed it to Instagram. That probably would have been a lot more popular if they did that, because Instagram is what's driving this company right now. But, they're disliked on both sides of politics. They're disliked by young people. They're disliked by, so many different groups of people, yet 3.65 billion people are on one of these apps every month. Instagram and Reels, based on your data, is still growing, even though they're incredibly popular. Note to everyone watching, the money that they're spending on the metaverse, they can afford it. They've got the money, right? So the question is, what can they do to change their image and get them back? Because, all accounts say that the metaverse is going to be a multi-trillion-dollar opportunity, but they're in that ugly phase when they're in between big projects, right? And the stock is just getting thrown out. Megan?
Yeah, no, I think you're exactly right. And it almost seems like Meta has a Zuckerberg problem more than anything. I think that, it's unfortunate for the company as a whole that its image is so closely tied to that leader that seems to be unrelatable in a sense for many consumers. And so you have that effect. It's kind of like the opposite of the Musk effect, if you will, when you think about a company like Tesla and kind of the rallying effect that Elon Musk has. It's kind of the opposite with Zuckerberg. But when we look at Meta, that's something I think you keyed in on, is that, this stock has just been pummeled of late. You can see this on this chart, and we do see continued usage and overall on its platform. And you can see that on the green line on this chart. So we're starting to see some signs of divergence whenever we look at this from a long-term perspective. And that's when, we see kind of consumer behavior heading one way and we see the stock heading in the opposite way. And so I think this is something that we're starting to look at least from a long-term lens, to say, okay, we do see Instagram doing really well right now. And one of the places that Instagram is doing well is actually converting purchases. So mentions from consumers who are talking about discovering a brand or a product and purchasing it on Instagram. You can see those mentions ticking up in the current season, especially ahead of the holidays. Those mentions are up by about 32% year over year. And when we look at this across the board and all social platforms, we do see Instagram leading the way. So when we compare, this conversion rate of advertising to actual consumer purchases to getting a consumer to spend money because they saw something on this platform, which is how Meta is going to generate revenue, we see Instagram doing the best job. The majority of mentions from consumers who are talking about, this concept of social commerce have completed a purchase on Instagram. So, Facebook does seem, or Meta, I should say, does seem well positioned in this arena, but we do know that overall ad spend has decreased. So, this isn't something that Meta is completely insulated from, but whenever we look at this, we do see Meta, because of how effective Instagram is at converting these purchases, a little bit more insulated versus a name like a Snapchat, who we see really underperforming in this arena.
Yeah, and Megan, as far as those in-app purchases that they rely on, right, as far as monetization of some of the ad business that they have, do you, with the consumer changing their spending habits, right, to experiences and travel, are you guys seeing any data that sees a pullback there? Because according to your other chart, it seems like, the stock price is far below what your data is reflective of.
We actually see Instagram doing pretty well in that sense in terms of overall conversions of consumers talking about this. I will note that a lot of the mentions that we're picking up are really niche brands. So you got to think of like new and upcoming brands that are, consumers are discovering for the first time, which may be different from like a large advertising spender that, our data, we're just not necessarily going to pick up on that. But I think that that's really where if you're thinking about this long term, something that we're starting to see Instagram is finally, getting the hang of again after losing that Apple, privacy first party data. You see that dip on this chart where, last year around this time, the company was really struggling, and we're starting to see signs that they're starting to do a better job of connecting consumers with those brands of interest again, which I think could be a positive sign long term, because we do see continued signs that consumers are still shopping on this platform.
Yeah, and I think they want Mark Zuckerberg to pull back on the investment he's got in that metaverse, because I don't know when that thing's going to get monetized at this point. But Megan, do you guys have an earnings score going into these results after the close?
Yeah, so heading into this earnings, we have Meta at about a positive 18. So for us, that is technically in the neutral threshold, but definitely more positive leaning. I do think that there is significant risk to the downside, just because I think investors are going to be watching for this pullback in ad spending, and any indication of that could be negatively received. So we're cautious there, but we do see Meta increasingly as a nice play for longer term investors, simply because its Instagram brand does seem to be outperforming.
All right, great stuff as always, Megan. We're going to take heed of those data points that you brought us. Have a good day.
Thanks, guys. You too.
Megan Brantley, Vice President of Research at LikeFolio, breaking down Meta Platforms here.